is John Dawson, and I'm doing a series of videos on intaglio etching techniques. I've done 3 videos previously in that series on various ways to do aquatint, and this will be the 4th and last video I'll be doing on aquatint. This particular one deals with doing an aquatint with BIG. BIG stands for Bigelow Intaglio Ground, and it comes in 2 different kinds. It comes in black and red. And I've already done a video earlier on how to use BIG, so I won't be going through that in this particular video. Essentially, you have to roll the BIG out on a glass palette and then apply it to the plate. And then we're going to use powdered sugar to create the aquatint. And we're going to try a number of different ways of applying the powdered sugar. The first couple, you can put it into a nylon stocking and apply it pretty much the same way you do rosin dust, or that we've done in a previous video with rosin dust. And you can do the same thing that I've done before in a couple of other videos, the one on rosin dust and the one on salt ground, by putting 1 ply of cheesecloth into a strainer, putting the powdered sugar into it, and to applying it to the plate. So we'll have some demonstrations of those 2 methods to begin with. With the powdered sugar inside the nylon stocking, you pat it against your hand, and the powdered sugar dust sprinkles onto the plate. The powdered sugar is so fine, it's actually kind of hard to see in the video, but it is coming out onto the plate. And then with the powdered sugar inside the strainer with the cheesecloth, you just hold it over the plate and tap the side of the strainer until the powdered sugar sprinkles out onto the plate. Well, in all these different ways of doing aquatint, a spray aquatint and a resin aquatint work exactly the reverse as a powdered sugar or salt aquatint works. In the case of a spray or resin aquatint, you're creating little droplets on the surface of the plate which are resistant to the acid, and the acid eats around the droplets that create kind of like a little mushroom shapes. In the other case, the salt or the powdered sugar penetrates the ground, creating little indentations through the ground which are eaten away by the acid, creating a kind of a dot pattern. Now, with that in mind, it occurred to me that why am I going through all this trouble in applying the powdered sugar in this relatively complicated way, using the strainer with the cheesecloth in it, or putting it into a nylon stocking. I couldn't see any reason why it just didn't dump it on the powdered sugar right on the plate that's been, of course, covered with BIG. And then in each case, you have to let it set for 15 minutes. You let it set for 15 minutes. You knock off the excess sugar, and it seemed to me it would work just as well. So I gave that a try. Well, another method to apply the powdered sugar to the plate that I think is probably a little simpler than the method with the strainer and the nylon stocking is to put the powdered sugar into a shaker, and you just shake it onto the plate like you would do if you're using a salt shaker. So you can apply the powdered sugar to the plate using a salt shaker, and I don't really think you have to be all that careful as to how much goes on it, because we're going to remove the excess later anyway. Or, as I said, I don't see any reason why you can't just dump some on just by the spoonful. As I said, you need to let it set for 15 minutes. Then As you can see here, I just tapped the excess sugar off and it seemed to work just fine. And this is pretty much how your plate should look after you've applied the powdered sugar. Okay, as I said earlier, once you have applied the powdered sugar to the plate, whatever method you choose to use, you have to let the plate sit for at least 15 minutes. Then you need to put it into an oven at 250 degrees, or that would be about 130 degrees Celsius for about 6 minutes. Or you can put it on the hot plate, also at about 250 or so degrees, for about 4 to 5 minutes. Then you need to let the plate cool, and you put it into a tray of warm water. And the warm water should be around 100 degrees. That would be about, I guess, about 40 degrees Celsius. You don't want to rub the plate at all. You just want to agitate the water by moving it back and forth. And if the powdered sugar doesn't look like it's dissolving completely, you may want to change the water or add more water to continue to dissolve the powdered sugar. Once the powdered sugar is dissolved, you need to take the plate out of the water and dry it. You could blot it dry. Probably a safer method would be either let it dry naturally or to use a hair dryer. Then once it's dry, you're ready to stop out any areas that you don't want to etch, and then put it in the acid. I generally don't like to suggest times in the acid because there's just too many variables, but it's been my experience that this Aquatint takes a little longer in the acid than some others do. So you might keep that in mind when you put it in the acid to make it whatever value that you want for your piece. Here are a couple of examples of the kind of aquatints that you can get with Big. Because the Big Aquatint hasn't been turned into a hard ground, you can usually clean off the plate when you're finished pretty easily with paint thinner. Well, the kind of aquatint you get with Big is, in my opinion, a very fine and almost delicate kind of aquatint. And I think it makes it ideal for another technique that you can try if you're interested. Most of the time, or probably nearly 100% of the time, when doing a drawing or a print, we work from negative space to positive space, meaning you start with the white of the paper and you apply something darker, charcoal, ink, whatever that would be. But some printmakers like to do it the other way around. Of course, I guess that would be what is done with a mezzotint technique. I personally have never done a mezzotint, so I guess I'm not completely sure about that. But in any event, one technique that you can do is to etch the plate completely black with an aquatint. And as I say, I think Big makes an aquatint that is very conducive to this. And then you scrape away the light areas and the various values to create your image. So I tried this, and I have a short demonstration as to how that works. Well, to begin with, you're going to want to put a black aquatint over the entire plate that you're going to be using. You probably want a little better and darker aquatint than I actually got here, but it's easily rectified later if you need to. I drew out an image on the plate using a Sharpie. The Sharpie drawing can be removed later with alcohol. Now we have a series of proofs at different stages of this process. This is where I just began to scrape out the highlights of this image. In this proof, we're beginning to establish some of the various values for the figure in the print. In this proof, I've applied a hard ground and added etched lines. And in this final proof, I've reapplied the big Aquatint mainly to the background because I didn't really think it was dark enough to start with. Well, that's essentially how you go about doing this particular technique of applying an Aquatint to the plate and making it completely black, and then scratching through, creating the highlights to create your image. About 100 years ago, around the turn of the 20th century, there were a number of artists that did some really nice things using this technique. I haven't done it before this particular demonstration. It takes more patience and I guess a lot more experience than I have to really do nice things with this particular technique. This will be the last video I'm going to do on Aquatint. There are other ways to do Aquatint, most of which I haven't tried myself. You can also create an Aquatint with asphaltum dust, and I believe I did try that once years ago. It's pretty much the same as you'd use powdered resin. As I remember, I don't think it worked nearly as well. I think it took a lot longer for the asphaltum dust to melt, but in any event, I never did it more than once. There's also a method that I understand you can do using olive oil and sulfur powder. You apply the olive oil to the plate and then sprinkle this sulfur powder in it. I don't have any idea where you would get that. And then I think how this works is you just let it sit overnight, and then the sulfur and olive oil combination somehow creates its own Aquatint. I've never done it, so I'm not really sure about how that works. You can also create an Aquatint by thinning down stop-out varnish and putting it in an airbrush, or applying it with a toothbrush by spritzing on the thinned down stop-out varnish onto the plate with a toothbrush, or as I say, you could also use an airbrush. And then there's another technique that I understand that people have used, where you heat the plate, you coat a piece of textured fabric with hard ground, and then you kind of blot or roll onto the heated plate this texture from the fabric. I guess that's kind of similar to what I showed in a previous video using ink and sandpaper. So I'll be doing other videos on Intaglio etching techniques, spit bite and marbling, and I'll also do one on how to remove false bites from your plate. I'll follow this up with some examples of my own prints, and the address for my Facebook page and web page, and you can subscribe to other videos of mine on YouTube. Bye.